1 year since Russian forces rolled into Ukraine. Thousands of people have died. Millions more have been displaced, and Ukraine's east is a shell of its former self. War casualties are notoriously difficult to estimate, and neither Ukraine nor Russia disclose their wartime losses. But this month, U.S. officials estimated that Russia had suffered closer to 200,000 killed or wounded, compared to Ukraine's 100,000. And last week, Britain's defense ministry similarly said that Ukraine's deaths to wounded ratio was significantly better than for the Russians. Let's bring in the panel. In studio, we have Dr. Aurel Braun. We have Eric Ouellet. And remote, we have Ben-Yishaï, Colonel Philip Wasielewski, and Ihor Kozak. Aurel, I'll begin with you. Let's look at those numbers because they're asymmetrical. For Russia, it's 3 wounded to 1 dead. In Ukraine, it's more like 10 to 1. Now, I understand why Ukraine may not want to disclose their casualty numbers, but if I were playing this propaganda war, I would sure want to disclose the other guy's numbers. And I might be bombing leaflets into Russia saying, "Mothers of Russia, look what this monster Putin is doing, sending your children to their grave."
I think it is a good idea to inform the Russian public as much as possible. I think many in Russia are, at least to some degree, aware that there are problems with what the Russian military performance is like. But let's not forget that the Kremlin controls much of the Russian media. They control television. They control the social networks to a great extent. So it's very difficult to get in there. And so whether it is the BBC broadcasting, whether it is Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, all that can help, because ultimately it is the case that the Russian people have to understand that they have a dictator who has brought them disaster.
Ihor, you and I had a conversation about a year ago, and actually your analysis stands up quite well. Today, we know what Putin's motive is. It's to rebuild the Soviet Union. He's made no bones about that. And yet there continues to be this sort of chorus of people that say, oh, we need to trade land for peace. There must be a ceasefire. How does this war end from your perspective?
From my perspective, and my perspective is based on my observations in Ukraine. I'm traveled to Ukraine office. I work with the leadership of Ukraine. I work with the commanders in the field. I work with people across the country, and I can tell you that people view this war is the war of survival, war of independence, and it can only end with Ukrainian victory. People of Ukraine and Ukrainian leadership, Ukrainian military are not willing to negotiate with Putin, simply because they look at their history and they know that any negotiation with the bully like Putin is going to only bring more fighting, if it's not now, then later. The moment to stop Russian aggression is now, and therefore they are pushing for victory. And on their eyes, the victory means recapturing all of their territories, going back to where they were at 1991, when Ukraine proclaimed independence from the Soviet Union, and pushing out all of the aggressors from the Ukrainian soil. And I do believe that the only way to end this war and to bring peace to Europe is through Ukraine's victory.
Ron, from your perspective, having covered almost all of Israel's conflicts and globally many wars, how does this war end from your perspective?
And Ukraine too. I was there from the beginning until the end of March. I think it will end in a sort of a negotiated settlement in which the Ukrainians will have to give up some of their wish list, and the Soviet, and the Russians, that was a Freudistic mistake, will have to suffice with maybe Crimea, maybe some of the Donbass region.
But Ron, if Russia is in any way better off, is there not every expectation that they would, in due course, seek a third invasion?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. They are not showing any sign that they are doing better. On the contrary, they, for instance, these days, the advances they make are measured in 300 meters for a week, somewhere in Bakhmut, in an area which is not very important. Anyway, they are not capable of making big gains, and I think they will not be capable for a long time.
Colonel Wasielewski, what do you think?
Regarding the war ending, I don't think we're going to see the war ending anytime soon, not as long as both sides have the will and resources to fight, and so far they do. The war aims for both parties are so far apart that there can be no negotiated settlement. This is going to be decided on the battlefield by the clash of arms. And any political settlement in the end is going to reflect the military situation on the ground.
Let me ask you, does that winner control Crimea?
Crimea is the key. It's a good question, because the control of Crimea is essentially, for both parties, what this war is about, at least on their major war aims. If Putin loses the Crimea, it is proof positive that he has lost the war, especially the emotional impact that this would have on Russian society and the Russian elites. No less so for the Ukrainians. If they're able to regain their territory in Ukraine, which was illegally annexed in 2014, this will be a great victory for them. So the Crimea is the key. For any, and I believe, and I've written for Foreign Policy Research Institute, that such a loss would end up leading to the demise of Putin. If that happens, a future Russian leader has an opportunity to let it go and possibly make peace. But even if Putin was to leave before then, as long as Crimea is in Russian hands, no Russian leader in the Kremlin would be able to achieve a negotiated peace that gives up the Crimea, in my estimate.
All right, quick break. We'll be right back.